Thank you.
This is our pt1 speaker series.
Okay,
This
great.
is our fourth presenter, I believe. So we've kind of got it up and rolling. The Exploratorium is open every day to any student who wants to come in and explore and kind of get some hands-on interaction with our technology. And the speaker series is kind of showing what people out in the world, like out in the trenches, are doing with technology. So we have Jean here, and she's going to be talking about iPad integration. And she is a junior high social studies and foreign language teacher. And with that, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to share the things that I do. They get to be normal after a while for me, so I forget that it is pretty cool what we do and what I can do with kids. So I'm Jean Heil. This is my 20th year as a teacher. And I have actually had the opportunity over the last 20 years to teach everything from kindergarten through 12th grade. And so the fun thing that I wouldn't let Katie share was that most of the people in this room are younger than I am, I'm sure. And my graduation present from high school was a typewriter. So when I tell my students today, they have to go, what is that? You know, so I have to explain that. So I'm proud of myself for the fact that to the point that I'm pretty comfortable teaching with an iPad and having classrooms full of students who come in and are learning from iPads. So I've come a long way in my journey as an educator, and I'm just absolutely open and excited for all the new things and the new possibilities. So again, thanks for having me. So any other little things, I have 3 kids. I have a 16-year-old in high school. He's my oldest. I have a 7th grader. He is not in any of my classes. He goes to a different middle school. And then I have my youngest is my daughter, who's in kindergarten this year. So they keep us very busy. And I'm an active thespian. I am vice president of our community theater and love to be on the stage. So I bring a lot of that to my social studies classroom as well. As Mr. Schroeder back there could tell you, we have a lot of fun. So, so I'm going to share today about some of the things, kind of a little bit of how we started, why we chose iPads, why we think that's best for kids, and really pushing them forward with Common Core state standards as well as 21st century learning standards. And so we'll launch into it. So I've got my race car because we're going to zoom through all this great stuff. So our school mission, and I teach at St. Ambrose School in Godfrey, Illinois. I had the pleasure of teaching with Alex for 2 years when he was a science teacher there. And so our school mission is to provide a foundation of religious truths and values wherein students will leave with the knowledge and skills necessary for life in the modern world. And it's that last piece that really technology speaks to most specifically. The iPad fit the bill for us because we looked at, we actually originally were considering netbooks for our students. And after using them, or attempting really to use them at different times, you know, within 2 hours they were dying. There was constant updates. They're just a pain in the butt. And we said, this is not going to work. We had a cart full of them, and we tried. And we just said, no, this isn't really what's best. It's going to be more hiccups than it's worth. So the battery life of the iPad is wonderful. It's compatible. We have smart boards in all of our classrooms. We actually have installed also Apple TVs since we've implemented iPads. And so the kids all have the potential to mirror what's on their iPads. And I'll talk more about that later. But a lot of the technologies that were already in place, the iPads really just kind of fit right in there. It's less paper, it's greener. That was one of my goals last year in our first year of implementation, was to be greener, try and be 85. My goal was 85% greener. So 85% less worksheets and all that sort of stuff, and try, use this tool to the utmost. It fits their lifestyles. Kids, my 3-year-old, when I first brought my iPad home, she was 3. I didn't say a word to her, and she was sliding things and taking pictures and finding apps, and it was like she had a chip in her brain that I didn't know about. So it's really, that's where kids are today. The collaborative content creation among students and teachers as well, sharing lessons, sharing ideas, collaborating on that. I've heard people say before that iPads are very individual, and while they can be, I have found them to be a humongous collaboration tool, a wonderful collaboration tool. To me, it lends more to collaboration than it does to individual. But there's both, obviously. And that learning goes beyond the classroom. I think next week your speaker is talking all about flipping classrooms and that whole concept. And we do some of that. I wouldn't say I'm a pure flipped classroom by any means, but we're doing more of that because the kids have everything that they need on this machine. And so the opportunity for them to be able to go home and read the textbook at home so that tomorrow we can do this great project and we can research and we can do all these other things and kind of extend the learning that way. And then of course increased communication between school and home as well. And I'll talk more about when I get into the apps and things that I use, particularly Edmodo, which is our key communication tool. So that's kind of just an overview of why we picked iPads, and there was more to it than that. It was several years of working on it, but that's just a little overview of that. So Common Core State Standards, 21st century skills, of course, are the buzzwords in education today. And we are rolling with that even at a parochial school. We realize that we need to stay current. We need to continue to do everything that we can to make sure kids are ready for college. And so even at the middle school and elementary level. And so I just picked a few of, and of course I teach social studies, so it's the reading history standards, the writing with history and science standards, and then just 3 ways I think that iPads really address 21st century skills. And I'll just give you a second to read that. I won't read that to you because you're all educated people, but
I have a question.
yes.
Is that an iPad that you're using up there to interface, and is that PowerPoint that you created that?
This is a Prezi, and yes, that's an iPad. It's iPad 2. So I don't even have the latest, greatest, and it does what I need it to do, so I'm pretty happy. So yeah, and, so these are just, again, some of those things, and I just pulled out a few, and for the activity piece, I pulled out even more. And of course, if I was a literature teacher or if I was a science teacher, there would be 500 more things and standards that could be pulled from that. So it really does hand in hand work with the standards, work with getting kids ready. You know, the citizenship, life and career, personal, social responsibility. We have to get kids ready to be people in the real world, to work at jobs, and that are, who knows, iPads will be obsolete by the time, but you know, we have to at least give them those opportunities. So those are just a little of that. I had an opportunity this summer to do about, I don't know, several days, probably 4 or 5 days worth total of training to a local high school who incorporated iPads into their freshman class this year. So their goal is to, as each freshman year, bring kids in and have those kids be on iPads. So in 4 years, obviously, then the whole building will be iPads. And so the teachers knew that we had implemented this last year, and I knew I had a connection, and she called and said, "Help us, will you come and talk?" And so I said, "Well, I'll share what I've done, and sure, if that helps." And I came across this, sometime in the last year, and I told them, I said, you know, this has really, for me, become my Bible, if you will, for integrating technology, to do what we're doing and to really make it meaningful. Not just, yeah, they used the iPad today, they typed notes, or yeah, they looked this up on the internet, so yes, and instead of just using technology, which is good, it's a step in the right direction, but there needs to be more. And with the 21st century skills and with Common Core standards, it is continuing. We're needing to push forward, we're needing to go further. And so I copied this, I have it on my folder where I do my lesson planning. So I look at this every time I do a lesson plan, and I say, okay, Am I planning? Is it purposeful what I'm doing with this iPad activity? Does it have a point, or is it just, you know, an afterthought? You know, is it routine? Do my kids just know we use iPads in my room all the time? Do they know that as a routine is just part of the class? Does it support those kind of standards and those objectives that I'm doing? Is it engaging? You know, is it pulling kids in, is allowing them to be creative, to be good thinkers and critical thinkers? Is it mostly being used by students? And that's always that's a tough one, because I'm like, hey, I'm so tech savvy. I've made my Prezi and I've got it up here on the board and I'm clicking through and I am so technology, right? And and are my students doing those things as well, and even going beyond that? So that's really the key, is it mostly being used by kids? And that's always a challenge for me, you know, less of me and more of them. Focus on technologies and creating and developing new thinking processes. Again, that 21st century, working on thinking and collaboration. Technology is used to learn, not just as, you know, how to, you know, oh, this is how you use your iPad, but okay, we got that down. Now we're going to use it to learn content, specifically social studies for me. Higher order thinking skills, collaboration, that's a big one, in and out of the classroom. And that's what's great too about the iPads. You know, team members, you know, if they're group members, they're team members, they communicate outside of school. Hey, I finished the slide today, what do you guys think? And it could be on a Saturday afternoon, and they don't have to be in the building. They can be at a basketball game on a Thursday night. Hey, I finished this, what do you think? Hey, what do you want to add this, you know? And there's that constant, they're collaborating even when they're not in my classroom. So that's a really exciting thing too. Activities that normally would be difficult, maybe even expensive. I know I noticed the app of the week or whatever is your frog dissection app. So there's opportunities. You know, we can't buy the frogs this year. That's okay, we can dissect them on the iPad. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do with this machine to move it along and build knowledge, as well as be essential to the activity, not just an afterthought. So really, 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 to me, that I thought that was gold when I found this, and it just really guides me every single day when I look at my lessons, when I review how I teach things, why I teach things, the order that I teach things in, all those things. How am I integrating it and really weaving it in? So I found this recently, the pros and cons of iPads in a social studies classroom. So I start with the pros, and you will notice when we go to the cons, it's much smaller. Okay? Because really, there are way more good things about this in a social studies classroom than there are negatives, and I wouldn't even say they're negatives. So there's this interaction with material, this ability to really get kids being the researchers and the historians and the wonderers and the questioners, and so they can really interact with that when they have their machines to do that. It's accommodating for various special education needs, with the touch screens, with the sounds, with the apps. They can do things at their own pace. Our textbooks have a built-in, I'll show you, the textbook has a built-in icon that children can plug in the headphones and they can read to them, which we have quite a few kids who really, and they don't have to do it in class. They can go home that night and go, what did Mrs. House say? Let me read, you know, and they can hear it while they're reading it. So that's a really great reinforcement. That's just one of the many things. There's, of course, thousands of apps. There's an app for that. They engage with their learning, similar to the technology slide from before, bringing the classroom out of the school and into the students' lives, giving them a chance to work with technology that they might be expected to use in the future, preparing them to be those citizens. Takes up a lot less space, and it's a lot lighter than, you know, even our science and our social studies textbooks right now are on our iPads. Our kids have those on their iPads, and you know, those are, what are they, 15 pounds a piece probably? And they're the two biggest textbooks of any of the classes, maybe other than math, but you know, and two of those, and then we've got all of it on the machine, and so, and that's, you know, amazing. Parents like that, kids love it. Their lockers are much neater. If something malfunctions with an iPad, it can be fixed, where if your textbook gets soaked and it molds, you have to replace it, right? Allows maps and documents, primary sources, to be much more interactive and beneficial, and it provides students with immediate feedback. You know, Mrs. Heil, I have a question. I don't know the answer to that. Look it up and tell us about it in 3 minutes, go. And then I can move on. And they're going, oh, okay. So they get that feedback. Hey, this is how we found it out. I'm like, okay, share it with us. And that happens all the time. It's wonderful. Because I tell them, I don't know everything. I mean, I mostly know everything, but I don't know everything. And so, you know, they own it then. They can go home and say, hey, I found this out today. And they found it out today. They did that. So it's really exciting. So, awesome things, but to do it justice, I will say that there are a few cons you have to consider. And this, I got it from sites.google.com, if anybody wants to know where that is. They are very expensive. That was our biggest toil as a tech committee in deciding how we were going to do iPads, was the cost. And so there are leasing programs, there are grants, there are a lot of ways to get a hold of them. We were fortunate to be in a building that most of our students, we have a few students on lease, I think, but most of our students' parents could afford to purchase them. But I know lots of public schools that are rolling out iPads that it's through grant money, it's through, I mean, they find a way in their budgets to do it because they know it's what's best for kids. But it is expensive. It extends the amount of time children spend wired to a virtual world, which is true. You know, brain breaks are needed. They need some time away from the iPads. They need, you know, that physical activity. They need those kinds of things. So you have to watch that, you know, so they're not just sitting in front of the screen all the time. Benefits could disproportionately spread over districts with higher socioeconomic status, which of course is the whole expense thing. You know, you may find that, you know, parochial schools, not all parochial schools, but some parochial schools, maybe parents have a higher socioeconomic status, so they can purchase them for their kids, where you may not find that in every place. So that can be a negative or a con. I laugh when I read this one, holds the threat of replacing a teacher, because if you've ever taught in a classroom of 30 kids who are all on iPads, ain't no way the teacher's going away. I mean, there's a huge amount of facilitating and managing, even though I'm not necessarily doing the teaching as much as I used to. You know, it's not the stand up and lecture anymore. It's the, here's your project, here's your group, go. But I've got to monitor, I've got to walk around the room. There's got to be someone there who can say, Mrs. Howe, I messed up, what do I do? Well, try this, hit this, go back here. Okay, go, you're back on track, go. You've got to have a teacher there. But I suppose maybe in a weird world, you could learn everything you needed to know on the iPad, but I don't think so. So difficult to regulate what content students are actually viewing. And again, that's a management piece. And there's part trust with your kids. There's a big part, teach procedures, and reinforce procedures. And if they know, the expectation is when you walk in Mrs. Howe's room, your iPad goes in the middle of your desk and it's closed until she tells you to open it, and you go over that every day. They know that, and they'll self-monitor. Hey, put your iPad away. She didn't say get it out yet. You know. So there is that, but it is a management piece, and it takes practice. But that could be a con for some teachers who maybe aren't used to doing that as much. And then for every educational app comes at least 2 games. So we are competing a little bit with some of those. Can we play a game? You know, no, you have this to do, and you know, staying focused on those things. I have to say the educational apps that my kids work with on a regular basis are very engaging. So I don't have too much where they're, you know, trying to sneak off and play some game. It happens, but you know, it's there, and that's true. So you know you have that competition. But you know, honestly, you know, the old-fashioned, you know, kid's got his science, social studies book open, but inside he's got the magazine, right? You know, so he looks like he's reading his textbook, but in the end, he's not really reading. Kids will find a way to, you know, not do what they're supposed to do, whether it's on technology or whether it's the old-fashioned way. So it's just, again, back to just a teacher management and classroom management kind of thing. So Any questions so far or comments? You can complain too, I guess, but I'm gonna keep going. So this is pretty much the end of my little Prezi here. So I'm gonna then spend the last, I think I have, oh, I never started it. Ooh. Do I have 30 minutes left? Is that right? Until we get them going?
Right.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna start, no, not an hour. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was gonna be all like on track and start my alarm and I didn't.